Unfortunately, the system is set up now that we give the extra help to the kiddos when they fail later in their school career. That's when they get the extra help, the extra services, the extra teachers, aides, classes, etc. But if we brought that extra help down to make sure that those younger kids had those solid basics first, I think it could wholly change the picture of what our public schools look like right now.
Kristina Heagh-Avritt is passionate about education, which is why she left the public school system and started her own company, Vibrant Family Education. She and her husband help parents take charge of their children's lives and learning. With people like Kristina, we may be in the midst of an education revolution that makes learning both effective, meaningful, and fun again. Come join the conversation. Kristina, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh, there we go. Hello, thank you for having me. I am so glad to be here with you on your podcast, Bump in the Road. It has been quite a story as a public school teacher and now supporting families in homeschool. And that journey is one of those where I started loving being a teacher when I was 8 years old. I actually went to my second grade teacher and told her, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take your job as a teacher. And she looked at me, she goes, really? You're thinking you want to be a teacher? It's like, yes, I do. And the beauty of that is I actually got to go back to my own elementary school and I got to teach with that wonderful inspiration teacher for 1 year before she retired. So I helped her retire. And then I got to teach in my home elementary school. And from there, it was like days and weeks of fulfilling my dream and being so excited about being a teacher and helping families and being with children and doing what I really, really loved. But then, unfortunately, as time went on, things changed. And I would go from crying at the end of the year because I was passing my students on to another teacher and I was going to miss them horribly, to times where I would just be crying all throughout the whole year. And unfortunately, that has been a big change in our school system. More rules, more regulation, more administration, things that were made it really hard for me to connect with my families, to connect with my children, and really do what was best for those children. And so in that, unfortunately, our school system needs some help. And I was not able to continue to help in the way I wanted to in the system. So I branched out. My husband supported me. He said, you know what, let's take this to the parents instead. Let's go to the parents and see if we can support them in finding a great fit education for them and their family and their children, and seeing if we can help these children who are struggling in the system, maybe move them outside of the system to homeschooling and have your support with all of your knowledge from all your years of experience and give them that leg up so that they have the confidence to become homeschoolers, so they have the confidence that they're doing a great thing for their child, and then they know that they have a teacher's perspective to help guide them along the way when they feel those bumps in the road that are really hard for them to overcome. So that's where I am now. I've left the public school. I have my own company, Vibrant Family Education, and it's one of those things where I'm supporting children and families get to the best education for them.
How do you start to put together a curriculum when you're homeschooling?
That is actually an easy thing nowadays. In the past, you would always have to go and look for curriculums that you could buy to piece things together. But now there are so many online curriculums that you can buy and use pieces and parts of as a family, or you can still go buy those textbooks, or you can just be, kind of really eclectic and go online, because there's so many places like teacher pay teacher, and there's a lot of worksheets and things that help you to understand what you need to teach and how you need to teach it. There's YouTube videos or all of these different things that really meets the learning styles of so many kids that it's easier than it used to be. And families just have to kind of dig in and really realize what their child needs to learn, where they're at, and then keep moving.
Do a lot of families kind of form almost a co-op where they can share some of the responsibility for education?
A lot of families do, and that's one of the things I love hearing is when you have a really strong co-op where families can give their strengths to other
Mhm.
families as well. So that is one of the things, one of the myths that I try to bust with families all the time and with parents is that, I can't be my child's teacher. And it's like, yes, you can, because you're actually their teacher from the minute you bring them home from the hospital or you adopt them or whatever, right? So you're teaching from the very, very beginning. And so you actually are your child's first best teacher because you know that child inside and out. You know their sleep patterns, their learning patterns. You know so much about them that a regular classroom teacher, even an invested teacher, won't necessarily know about your child. But a lot of parents are like, oh, but I can't be the teacher because I don't have the degree. Or maybe I wasn't very good at school either. Or maybe there's something that I just don't quite get. And so when they go to those co-ops and say, hey, I'm not very good at math, but I'm great at art, or I'm great at reading, and they share with another family and another parent and they get the help and support and swap back and forth, that's one of the best things that they can do. Yeah.
I think the idea of being able to form your own individual curriculum for a child is beyond wonderful. I mean, there's so many resources and so much information online now that
Yeah.
if you have a gifted child or if you have a child that's having a little more difficulty, they can find their path.
Yeah.
I think no matter what.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, and it's so amazing because we also get past that thing, where in the public school system, they're on a curriculum schedule, right? They have to
Yeah.
do this on this day on this page. They have to get to a certain part by the end of the school year. And I'm not saying that we don't want children advancing, but we know that children learn at different rates and different styles, right? And like you said, there's those who are excelled and bright and just like pick up things really, really fast. And then we have those kiddos who need more repetitions. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way they learn. But the families get to make sure that they teach to mastery. They get to go to the point where they know for sure their child knows the information before they move on. And then the child doesn't have gaps in their education. And then they love learning because it's fun and exciting, because they don't feel silly or dumb because they don't get it, right? They're able to have that time to get the whole information and get to mastery. As a matter of fact, one of the students that I was working with, the family absolutely loved, they did their online curriculum in the morning. And because the child was an early riser, and so they got everything all done. And then she got to go to extracurricular activities, extra science club, extra dance club, those kinds of things in the afternoon to really study the things that she wanted to after she got her academics done.
Do you think that home environment is more supportive than the school environment? And let me explain what I mean. I mean, school's tough. I mean, kids can be mean. It's hard to
Mhm.
stand out as an individual, I think, sometimes in that situation. Does homeschooling give children more freedom to develop who they really are?
In many ways, again, this parent has to really look at their child. If their child is a major outgoing student,
Mhm.
very, extroverted, we like to call them, right? Then they will really need to make sure that they're feeding that into their child, giving them enough outside activities and stuff. But for those who are hesitant, those are a little bit introverted, all of that, absolutely, that home environment, they have that safety, that security. They know that, sorry, they're definitely going to go out and be in the social, because that's part of homeschooling, is supporting your child to become great communicators. But they have that safety net, that security, that little bit quieter space, right? Where those who get distracted easily, guess what? Now they aren't being distracted by 26 or 27 other students in the room, or the noises in the hallway, things like that. Learning comes to them easier because they have more support, more focus. And so, yeah, the homeschool environment can be super, super amazing for so many students. And like I said, parents are the best teacher. They'll know if they need to get their student out and about a little bit more to also feed that other part of the child.
What are some of the most innovative things you've seen in a homeschool curriculum?
That gets really, really interesting because there is the full range from what is called unschooling, where basically the family doesn't use any curriculum at all. Instead, they just go with the students' learning interests and what they're doing during the day. So they teach math through their budgeting, through their cooking, through all those kinds of things, just the natural daily activities. And they teach their reading and writing the same way by writing letters to grandma and grandpa and doing the different things throughout the day for the writing practice and the reading practice. So that's unschooling. And for that, you have to have a lot of confidence in what you know and what you really want for your child, and really be able to follow their lead as to what they want to learn about, kind of thing. But then there is the full on curriculum where everything is scripted out. You can get that for your child if you're, one of those people who aren't very confident. You had the full. But the thing I love the most and most innovative I've seen is that really eclectic learning, where a parent will learn from videos for a while and then take that to the child, and then they do like some book work or some written work, but then they take it into the art, into the kitchen, into cooking, all those different things where the child can just explore and have fun. There's a group that does sensory lessons, right? So then they take the child out into exploring the woods and things like that, and get all those sensory things into their education as well. So it's just amazing, and what you can see in all the different curriculums.
Are there grades that are more adaptable to homeschooling, some more than others?
Say that again. Did you say brains
No,
or?
grades like, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade versus high school.
Got it. More adaptable to homeschooling. Well, it that goes with the family again. It's one of those things where if you start young and that's kind of all that the student knows, then they just go with the flow. They're usually just ready to go and learn and explore. If you're trying to take a high schooler out of the school setting and they think that they're going to miss their friends and miss the social activities and things like that, then they aren't very adaptable with that. But at the same time, I really stress with my families that this is, yes, a parent decision, but it's also, especially for an older child, a child involved decision as well. Show them the benefits, show them what they can do, show them all the experiences that they can have that's different from the school. And lots of times, especially if they're struggling in school, they'll say, oh yeah, this is where I want to be. And they become very adaptable. So it goes back to that thing that we want all families to do: communicate. Talk to your child, talk to the family, make sure you have the support, and really get on the same page with everyone of what they want, where they want to go, and how they want to do it. Mhm.
What about AP classes and things like that? How do you handle that?
Oh, that is amazing, because there are so many community colleges and things now that do what's called early enrollment or dual enrollment
Mhm.
for high school kiddos. All of those AP classes basically by starting college early. The families just say, okay, you're at a certain age, you can handle yourself in outside settings, you're ready for these kinds of leveled classes. And so then they can do that. But there's also those homeschool families in those co-ops where they've had like a teacher retire and teach classes. So they can teach those higher AP kinds of classes as well in that co-op setting. Mm-hmm.
When kids leave a homeschool environment, say, and they go to college, are they socially prepared?
Absolutely. They are actually more socially prepared than a lot of our public school kids nowadays. There are colleges and universities who are seeking out the homeschool kiddos because they've had more life experience. They know how to handle things a lot differently than the school kiddos. And then they also just have that love of learning in them. And lots of times they know where they're going already, because as a homeschool student, they get to explore the things that they really enjoy lots of times. So they get their basic academics, but then they get to try entrepreneurship for a while, or they get to try a certain style of art or a certain style of dance or a certain, maybe even job shadowing with an aunt or an uncle or somebody else. You can set those kinds of things up in the homeschooling world as well. And then they really know what they want. So the homeschool kiddos, currently there studies out there that say that homeschool kiddos are actually being more successful in college and university. They get done on time. They don't have the issues of loneliness and not knowing how to take care of themselves that some of the other kids do. So it's actually a better fit lots of times.
What can the existing educational system learn from the homeschooling system?
Oh, wow. Quite a bit. It's one of those things that, because I was a public school teacher and I understand exactly, all those things that the teachers are facing nowadays, right? Because they're um, constrained by the curriculum that has to be taught by a certain level. They're constrained by the number of kids that are in their room. They're constrained by the policies and sometimes the behaviors of other kiddos. Even the most dedicated teacher is having a hard time reaching those kids that they really need to reach. And what I would say the public school can learn the most is to slow down a little bit. If they make sure they're paying attention to the elementary kiddos, those beginning years, and slow down a little bit and make sure they really learn to mastery and don't leave gaps in that child's education, then they're going to have so many less problems with the kids when they get older, because they're going to have those solid foundations. Unfortunately, the system is set up now that we give the extra help to the kiddos when they fail later in their school career. That's when they get the extra help, the extra services, the extra teachers, aides, classes, etc. But if we brought that extra help down to make sure that those younger kids had those solid basics first, I think it could wholly change the picture of what our public schools look like right now.
Yeah, it looks like our public schools are failing on multiple levels. I mean, certainly they're graduating people that don't have the basic English or math skills that are needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, how do we, I mean, all right, we reverse that by going back to the earlier grades and paying attention. But there's something so broken about the system that these kids
Mm-hmm.
aren't getting the attention. Obviously, they're not mastering the material. Coming from a background where I was always expected to academically excel, I find it really hard to grasp all this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's so many things. People say that the school system just needs more money, but again, from my experience, it's not necessarily that they need more money. They need to refocus their priorities. Our schools are focused on so wide a range of things anymore, of what they say they have to teach. But if they really focus on the basics, reading, writing, math, science, right, and let the families take care of the other things like values and social emotional things like that the best they can. I mean, you have to blend that stuff into what you
Mhm.
teach, but at the same time, if they took off some of those extra hats and really focused on the basic academics, right, and help kids learn how to be good kids, then things could change around.
I live in a county where 65% of people employed by the school district were administrators. How does that come to be?
How does that what? I'm
How
sorry.
does that come to be? I mean, how can a school system run when over half the people they employ are in administration? What in the world do they do?
Right. Well, as a teacher who lived that world, I didn't need that much administration above me. I knew what I was expected to teach, and I knew how to reach my kiddos because I had the experience. Now, granted, there has to be support for the new teachers so that they know what the kids need, kind of thing, right? They need that mentorship, but we don't need as much top-down administration as we have. When I first started teaching 27 years ago, well, almost 30 years ago now, I was in a rural, small district. We had 2 elementary schools. We had 1 principal in each school, and we had our community club. We had our parent support, and we were one of the top rated schools in the state. And then the state changed the rules and said, if you don't have a high school, if you don't belong to this big conglomerate of schools, then you can't be a school district anymore. So we were forced to join our city next to us with a high school. So we went from 2 elementary schools to suddenly 18 elementary schools and 3 high schools and 2 middle schools. And the amount of administration that ended up happening because of that. And then from that point on, really changed, like I said, the policies and the way I had to teach because of all that top-down administration. I'm sorry, you don't need as much administration as is there.
How much of that administration do you think is a function of federal control of schools? And where is the balance between a federal system and a local system?
Truly, I would really love to see, the federal comes in and helps out with like funding and stuff. But I don't see that we really need that top down information, that top down administration. I think the states and actually the community should take more control of their schooling again. It's gotten way too big and way out of control. Because if you think about it, yes, we need to raise children to be able to handle things from around the world and information and influences and things like that. But if a child grows up in a city and they stay in that area, right, then they need to know what's important to that local area. And that's being missed lots of times. It's being pushed to this big global picture. And instead, it's like the kiddos, if they knew what was available in their own area and how to work in the industries in their own area, that would be very, very helpful as well. So there has to be that balance. And, I don't think the federal government needs to be as involved. I think the states, if they would really buckle down and look at it, could do a much better job of running their schools.
What's the role of school boards?
School boards. That's an interesting one for sure.
Well, they've been in the news a lot lately and not in a very flattering way.
Not in a very flattering way. It's one of those things that if the school boards are really looking out for the best interests of their students and their community, they're a great thing. Because we had school boards that really listened to and worked with the parents to make sure that the children were getting what they needed. When school boards have, kind of like the federal government, these grandiose ideas of, oh, we have to make our children ready for the whole world instead of, making them good, solid human beings at the beginning, it gets a little bit crazy. So a school board, I think, really needs to be connected with the community, and they really need to have the community values. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, though, when people run for office, all of a sudden, a lot of them go on a power trip and they're just removed from
Mm-hmm.
everything that matters. And you see it again and again. It's human nature to some degree. But do we need school boards?
Hmm. Well, as long as you have a really strong parent community, probably not, because the parent community would step up into those roles and really make sure that they're looking out for what's best. I had parents coming to me all the time like, oh, I found this really wonderful program that I think would be great for your classroom to teach this certain part of the curriculum. And they were so resourceful and amazing, right? And if they knew that that was their task, is to bring things in and help the school community understand some of these new great activities and curriculums and programs that are available, they would do that. They would step up. If they were invited back in, because unfortunately parents have been pushed out recently, if they were invited back in to be a partner with the teachers and with the administration, the smaller administration that's there, they would be so successful, I think.
For somebody looking at homeschooling, what are the key things they need to consider?
For homeschooling,
Yeah.
is that what you asked? The key things to consider for changing to homeschool? Absolutely. The main thing is that you have to remember that there's three things that the system is trying to teach you that you need to try to weed out. The first thing is that you can't be your child's teacher, and we know that's not true because you already are. The second thing is that they try to tell that you can't have enough time to homeschool. And actually, once you learn about it, you realize you have plenty of time because you're not picking up school and bringing it into your living room. You're not spending 6 hours a day trying to mimic the school system and the school classroom. You get to do it in a way that really meets your child's needs. And it takes a lot less time because you're dealing with 1 or 2 or 3 instead of 36. So that's another myth that people really need to set aside, right? And the last myth that comes in a lot is, oh, my child will be the weird one. My child won't be socialized. They won't know how to. And what I help families realize is that actually, like we were talking about with the colleges and universities, most of our homeschool kiddos are actually the opposite. They can walk up to an adult and confidently have a conversation because they've been out in the community doing social service. They've been in groups and clubs that are fit to their what they want to learn about. So then it's a better experience. They aren't being bullied. They aren't able, having those other rough life kinds of experiences. Instead, they're having more successful, creative experiences. So when families consider homeschooling, they really want to dig into their values. What do I want for my child? What do I think my child wants, especially if they're younger? If they're older, have that conversation, right? And then after that, after you have your family values set and you know this is going to be something that you really want to take on, then don't be afraid. Find those resources, find those places that you can get help for getting over the bumps that are going to be there. But know that even if you are not a perfect homeschool parent, you have your child's best interest at heart, and that makes all the difference in the world.